When you consider the possibility of establishing a liturgy committee in your parish, your school, or your religious community, you'll quickly discover that there are no official ecclesiastical documents for governing the responsibilities, the membership, and the functioning of a liturgy committee. All this is left to the discretion of the local community. However, there is a basis for the Liturgy Committee in the Constitution on the Sacred Liturgy, the first document promulgated by the Second Vatican Council on December 4th, 1963, which establishes the vision for the liturgical life of the Church. The section of that document I'm referring to is entitled Promotion of Liturgical Instruction and Active Participation. Paragraphs 14 to 20 states that dioceses, parishes, schools of religion have the responsibility of providing ongoing liturgical formation for their communities. This is the undertaking and the basis of the ministry of the Liturgy Committee. Based on this, we can say that the primary responsibility of the Liturgy Committee is to oversee and develop the liturgical life of the community in collaboration with parish, school, religious community leadership. Now, here's some tips for getting started based on my own experience. First, the question of membership. Who belongs to the Liturgy Committee? Invite people who already have liturgical responsibilities in the community, such as the director of music, or the coordinator of liturgical ministries, or key staff members whose ministry is related to liturgy, such as the youth minister, or the one who ministers to elders, or the director of the catechumenate process. If your community is multicultural, invite members from each cultural group to participate in the work of the committee. Consider 2 or 3 at-large members. They're the members of the community who can offer the committee valuable feedback from the pews, even if they don't wish to take upon themselves any specific responsibilities. Their feedback is important. Limit the term of service for at-large members so that new faces, new personalities will be bringing in fresh feedback at all times. Now, once you establish membership, attend to 2 basic organizational details. First, agree on a committee chairperson who knows how to facilitate a conversation. Second, agree who will be responsible for keeping accurate minutes at meetings so that time is not going to be wasted trying to recall what was decided at a previous meeting. Next, establish a covenant among members agreeing to do the following. At meetings, celebrate ritual prayer as part of each and every meeting throughout the year. Exercise active listening and agree to remind one another often that the Liturgy Committee exists to serve the people of the community. Now, what are the functions of the Liturgy Committee? The answer to that question, of course, is at the discretion of the parish, the school, or the religious community. However, let me suggest these basic functions as starters. First, engage in the ongoing liturgical formation of the Liturgy Committee itself. The Liturgy Committee is required to understand the Church's liturgy in order to do its job competently. The best sources for this are the Church's official liturgical documents. So, for example, if the Liturgy Committee is responsible for preparing Sunday celebrations of the Eucharist, the document called the General Instruction on the Roman Missal, or the GIRM, GERM for short, is required reading. Now here's a low-stress way to proceed. Spend 30 or 45 minutes of each meeting exploring the document. Do only one section per meeting. Read that section in advance of the meeting with the following questions in mind. Why is this significant? What needs clarification? How is this material calling us to improve the liturgical life in our parish, or our school, or our religious community? As you process those questions, keep an ongoing comparative analysis of what's envisioned in the document and what your current liturgical practice is. Now, after completing the document, you will most likely have a robust to-do list. Approach this list in this manner. Prioritize the areas for the improvement of your community liturgy. Break down big projects into smaller tasks. Establish reasonable time frames for implementation, 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years. Agree who will be responsible for specific tasks. Address one task at a time. Include catechesis for community members for any liturgical improvement that's enacted. Evaluate progress and outcomes and make modifications when necessary. Seek out, welcome, and utilize feedback from the community. Now, after one project has taken root in the community's liturgical life, move on to the next. Now, in time, when you find that the celebration of the Sunday Mass is functioning at the level that the Liturgy Committee has aimed for, now you might want to turn your attention to other liturgical rites. The celebration of baptism, the celebration of the anointing of the sick, the celebration of penance, whatever it may be, obtain the necessary liturgical documentation and repeat the process you used to address the improvements for Sunday Mass. Another recommendation. The Liturgy Committee may wish to engage in the actual preparation of Sunday's Eucharistic liturgy. Consider creating small working groups to attend to specific liturgical seasons, such as the season of Advent, or the Christmas season, or a set of Sundays, consecutive Sundays during ordinary time, or specific special occasions, such as the annual Lenten penitential service, or the annual patronal feast of the parish. Third, a liturgy committee may wish to address ongoing liturgical formation of the community. So think about things like mini courses in face-to-face format or in online opportunities. Invite guest speakers to address the community and lead a conversation on a specific matter in the liturgy. Provide brief weekly liturgical catechesis in the parish bulletin. Include liturgical catechesis on the parish website. Make reading material or audio or visual material available at minimum cost at the church entrances for people to take home. You might even want to consider offering a 5-minute mini catechesis on a liturgical topic at the beginning of all meetings of parish organizations. Here's a fourth recommendation for getting started. The Liturgy Committee might also spearhead the process for establishing and updating liturgical policies in the parish. For example, how do we envision weddings to be celebrated in this parish community or this campus community? How do we envision funerals being celebrated? So these are just a few examples of how a liturgy committee can fulfill the aim of overseeing and developing the liturgical life of a community in collaboration with the community's leaders, be it parish, school, or religious community. Now, how does the Liturgy Committee function? Say that a working group of 5 Liturgy Committee members agrees to prepare the Sunday Masses for the 4 Sundays of Advent. The work group, we'll say, consists of the parish music director, the liturgical environment coordinator, the coordinator of liturgical catechesis, plus 2 at-large members from the community, a total of 5 people. One at-large member agrees to chair the meetings, and the environment coordinator agrees to keep minutes. So that's how this group is organized. The group also agrees on 3 2-hour meetings in the month of August to prepare for the 4 Sundays of Advent. 2 meetings for spiritual reflection to assist the music director, environmental coordinator, and liturgical catechesis coordinator to craft their plans. And the 3rd meeting is devoted to concretizing the plans. Note that the Liturgy Committee is not taking away the assigned responsibilities from any of those who have a specific role, for example, the music director, but instead, the committee is serving as a conversation group to assist them in their work. So now that we know who is on the planning group and what the purpose of the planning group is, let's walk through the preparation process. There are many, many different versions of preparation process for liturgy. This is simply one of them, which I share with you from my own experience. Now, in preparation for the first meeting, everyone agrees to consult the liturgical texts for the 1st and 2nd Sundays of Advent. That's the focus of the first meeting. So this means that each person will read and prayerfully reflect upon the liturgical texts in the Roman Missal and the lectionary for 1st Sunday and 2nd Sunday of Advent. The text of the Roman Missal would be the entrance antiphon, the opening prayer, the prayer over the gifts, the preface of the Eucharistic prayer, the communion antiphon, and the prayer after communion. About 2 pages for each Sunday. The texts in the lectionary are the Old Testament reading, Psalm, Epistle, and Gospel. Now, while reading and praying over these texts at one's own pace, everyone is asked to jot down words, phrases, images, thoughts, and even the key biblical personalities that capture their imaginations. The point of this exercise is to immerse one's self into the spirituality of Advent so that that spirituality may inform the music selections, the arrangement of the liturgical environment, and the catechesis for the Advent season, and even the liturgical preaching that will be offered during this season. Now, with preparation completed, we go to the first meeting. The first meeting begins with 10 minutes of ritual prayer. The next 60 minutes are devoted to reading the liturgical texts slowly and aloud, and then sharing those lists of the words, the phrases, the images, the thoughts, and the key biblical personalities that stood out for the participants at the meeting. 10-minute break should follow. Then the next 40 minutes is spent brainstorming on how these words, these phrases, these images, these thoughts, these biblical personalities can have an impact on the musical selections the musical environment, liturgical catechesis, and the preaching. In other words, we're making connections between sacred texts and the sacred rites so that they can affect living, Christian living. Note that no one is attempting to reduce the rich catalog of Advent spirituality that was brought to the table with the words, the images, and so on, to one common theme for each Sunday. Instead, the goal here is to enable all the words and phrases and images and thoughts and key biblical personalities to communicate to the liturgical assembly. In this way, God can reach as many hearts as possible. The first meeting's over. Now, between the first meeting and the second meeting, two things are going on simultaneously. The staff, the music director, liturgical environment coordinator, and liturgical catechesis coordinator consult with their constituencies, and they slate some preliminary plans for the first and second Sunday of Advent. Meanwhile, everyone else agrees to move on and read and pray over the liturgical texts from the Roman Missal and the lectionary for the third and fourth Sundays of Advent, and again to jot down words, phrases, images, thoughts, and the key biblical personalities that stand out for them. Now, the second meeting resembles the first one. 10 minutes of ritual prayer, 60 minutes of reflection on the liturgical texts for the third and fourth Sunday of Advent, and 40 minutes devoted to the implications these texts may have on music, liturgical environment, and catechesis. Now, we come to the third meeting. The third meeting begins with the customary 10 minutes of ritual prayer. Then, the music director, the liturgical environment coordinator, and the liturgical catechesis director share their plans for the 4 Sundays of Advent, and they invite input from the other members. And from that conversation, plans are refined and concretized. Then, responsibilities for various tasks are agreed upon amongst the group where necessary. And the meeting ends with setting a date for an evaluation of the Advent season at some time after Christmas, and the meeting is adjourned.